Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, and just like the title below says, this will be my review of the 4th episode of HBO's Lovecraft Country. Okay, so just a quick touch on the ending of the 3rd episode of Lovecraft Country. We find out that Christina, she survived, and I wasn't surprised that she had survived off of what happened off of the 2nd episode. However, I was surprised, although it kind of made sense, that she had something to do with Leti getting the house. And Tick, he confronts her, and then he points out a gun, and he tries to pull the trigger, but of course, Christina, she's got that magic, and she put that magic on him, and he was physically unable to pull the trigger. And so that's how that episode ended. And then we start at the beginning of the 4th episode, where we see Tick's father, who is Montavious. Like, so far I've just been calling him Tick's father, but I'm going to try and start calling him Montavious because 1, that's a really nice name, and 2, I feel like it'll be a lot easier to just, when I'm relaying all this. Anyway, so this man, he's really going through it, understandably. Like, he was kidnapped and held hostage, and his brother died in his arms, and, he's just going through so much trauma on top of, like, the trauma that he already has from his childhood. And while he's going through all of it, we hear, like, a voiceover of a child, and being yelled at by his father, and him begging his father, not to beat him. And it isn't really clear, at least it wasn't to me, that the child that was begging, his father, not to beat him was Tick asking his father not to beat him, because they kind of like have Montavious, he was kind of like abusive to Tick himself, or if that little boy was Montavious, like Montavious, he was remembering like his own childhood and how his father was abusive to him, because that's the reason that he became abusive to his own son, is because Montavious and George's father was abusive to the both of them. And George, he went one way and he became like a better father in spite of that. And then Montavious, he unfortunately continued the cycle of abuse. So it's really unclear, or it could be both, like he is remembering the abuse that his father did to him, and then he's remembering the abuse that he enacted to his own son. So the lines are really blurred, and I wasn't sure if that was on purpose, but either way, I thought it was very interesting. And in the end, what of that scene, what ends up happening is Montavious, he has the Book of Atoms that George gave him, and then he puts it in a trash bin, and he lights it on fire, and he's like, smells just like Tulsa. And so, yeah, that just had like a whole lot of meaning towards it. And like I said, like he's really going through it, and it is such a shame that therapy wasn't as prevalent as it is nowadays, because I really feel like he could benefit from some therapy just to help him process with his grief and his trauma and his obvious post-traumatic stress disorder. But anyway, so that happens. And then we cut to Christina driving in one of those nice looking cars, the silver Monopoly looking cars. And then while that is happening, the song, Better Have My Money by Rihanna starts playing. And while I love Rihanna, and I like that song, I like play it. However, I did not like it within the context of not only this scene, but really this show overall as of right now, because it's set in the 1950s. And I'm somebody who would prefer to hear songs from that time period, or songs that sound like it could be from that time period. Something like Brandy's song, Beggin' and Pleadin'. That is a modern day song, but I feel like it could fit, because it's kind of like, blues, rock and roll. It could fit within, like, it's a song that I could believe, like, came from the 1950s, whereas Rihanna's song is, like, obviously, like, a 2010, early 2000s song. But, that's just me. That's just my personal take. It kind of took me out of the scene just a little bit. But anyway, Christina, she's driving, and then she goes up to Letty's house, and at the on the sidewalk in front of Letty's house, the word black is painted on it, and I was surprised because you know it was a racist that did that. But I was surprised that they just said black and they didn't put like some derogatory term for, for black people. Like the N-word, Sambo, Jigaboo, one of those. I was surprised that they just wrote black. But anyway, that's just me like nitpicking. So Christina, she walks up to the door, and Leti, she sees her and she opens the door, and then as Christina is still advancing, she's asking, like, may I come in, with a smile on her face, again, still advancing. And it's just the entitlement from her, because she doesn't even stop and then ask, can I come in? She's just asking while she's still coming in, leading me to think, like, she has no intention to just stop and wait for permission. Because, again, like, it's just that entitlement from her. But of course, because of the conjure woman from last episode who helped with the exorcism, she, the X was still there on the, on the frame of the door, and, good on Leti for not wiping that off. And it blocks Christina from coming in. And then she mentions the serial killer scientist Dr. Dude, whose name is Hiram. Hiram. Yeah, Hiram, I believe that. I'm probably butchering the name, but yeah, Hiram. She's like, oh, I see, like, you've met his ghost and you took care of him. Meaning that, she was aware of that situation. And then, Leti, she eventually figures it out that it wasn't her mom that left her the money, and that it was actually Christina, and she had arranged for Leti to purchase the house that she has with the money that was given to her under the guise that it was her mother, which in a way made me a little relieved, because again, last episode, I had questions as to why was it that that Leti, out of all three of the children, Leti, her brother, and her sister, Leti was the only one that got the money. Like that, especially since the mother was selfish, like from the way that they were describing her, I would have figured that the mother would have blown all the money. Like she would have died with not a cent to her name. But then to find out that she had the money, allegedly, and that she only gave it to one child, and it was like her light-skinned child, that really didn't sit right with me. So again, in a way, I was kind of relieved that it was just Christina being a manipulative, person. And, she got what she wanted. Like, Leti certainly did move into the house. And like Leti said, it may have been your money, but, my name is on the deed. Now get off my porch. And then she just slams the door in her face. But not before Christina mentions that, oh, Hiram, he had this, the solar system thingy that I mentioned last episode. It's called an Ori. I didn't know that, but apparently that was Hiram's, and that's why she came there. Which, again, makes me curious as to why. Because, again, like, Christina, she obviously had the connections and she had the money. Like, why didn't she just purchase the house herself? And then when she came into town, she could have got it herself. Like, why was it so important that, Leti be the one to get the house? Especially since Christina was going to need something from that house. And if Leti owns it, then legally speaking, like, there was no way she was going to just hand that thing over to her if she was able to find it. But yeah, Leti wants no part of, Christina, and understandably so. Like, like, her people, like, killed Leti and then brought her back as a way to emotionally manipulate and pressure Tick. Like, Leti doesn't want that. She doesn't need any of that. So, and then also Christina, like, lets Leti know that, hey, George tried to kill me. And then, and then eventually, like, Leti slams the door. And Christina walks away. And then Leti, she charges over to the library for colored folks. She charges over to the library, and then she's just like asking Tick all of these questions. And what I really liked, and this just really goes to show to like the talent of the writers, is they're having this very serious moment, and there is stakes, like people, we should be worried. But they're doing it at a library, and a library is a place that is traditionally a quiet place because people are reading, they are studying, they're doing, all this stuff. And because Leti is so heated, she's like getting, she's loud, she's getting that quiet loud where you're trying to be quiet but your voice sounds so like passionate and harsh that it gets, that it gets louder. And then the energy that she's giving off, Tick, he takes that in, and then he starts getting, a bit louder than what he intends. And then you have like this sweet little black boy he's there to read his book quietly, and he tells the both of them to shh. It's the library, I'm trying to read. And I just thought that like that was funny. Like that little boy just saying like shh, and then he getting fed up and he just slams the book on the table and walks away to like try and go somewhere because he just wants to quietly read. But anyway, when as Leti and Tick are talking, Tick admits to Leti that it was his intention to shoot and kill a white woman in broad daylight in the 1950s and then hightail his ass out down to Florida, to the south. Like not up to Canada. Not on a boat to like Liberia, or not on a boat to like Haiti or Jamaica, but going deeper into America in the south after killing a white woman. Okay. And Leti, she is upset. She's just like, what? So you were just gonna do this and then leave and like not say anything? Really? Really not? You were just gonna do all of that after I let you into my home and I let you into my body and I gave you my virginity? You were just gonna you were just gonna kill a white woman and leave without saying a word? Really? Are you serious right now? Really? She's in her feelings, like, because this is the man that she lost her virginity to, and he was going to like do something like really serious and then leave without saying a word and probably never sending word back to her. And Tick, he's just like, I was trying to protect you. But that's that's not good enough for Leti. She's upset. And then Tick, he's also, the reason why he was at the library is because he's trying to do research, because he wants to try to find a way to like learn some type of magic to protect himself and to protect the people that he cares about from Christina and the organization that she is unofficially a part of. And Leti, she rightly points out that, Tick's father, all of the research that Tick is doing, his father has already done, and so he could make their job a lot easier. And Tick is just like, my daddy ain't gonna want to help. And then she storms off, and then Tick, he goes back to like try and do his research. But then when he looks at the books that were that he was researching and reading out of, he saw that his father had already checked out those books. So he decides to go and find his father to ask him those questions. And when he goes to the bar where his father is at, lo and behold, Leti is already there, and she's already like told him everything. And Montavious, he's just like, where did I go wrong with you? And I'm like, well, you beat your son for no good reason. Like, we'll start with that. Like, let's start with that. But yeah, Montavious, he's just like, stop trying to, figure stuff out. Like, just leave it alone. Don't touch it. Don't go near it. But, Tick, he doesn't want to do that. He wants to learn what he can learn so that he can defend himself and if necessary, fight back, which is understandable. Like, Tick, I understand where Tick is coming from, and then I also understand where Montavious is coming from. Tick, he wants to get as much information and go where he needs to go in order to protect himself, and Montavious, he just wants to, just stay in defensive mode and then just, get away from the danger and not go out and seek it out. And they're at an impasse, and Tick, he's been resolved. He's going to go and he's going to get this information regardless if Montavious is there or not. And Leti, she basically is like, you already have all this information and you're letting your son, go out there blind. Really? Really? And, that gets to Montavious, because in spite of everything, despite like his harsh, his harsh attitude and like his hard personality, there is love for his son. So he is convinced and he agrees to like go with them. They're going to Boston to a museum to like look for answers, and they were gonna take the car they were going to take Uncle George's car, and because he has unfortunately passed, it is Hippolyta's. It's Hippolyta's car. And they were so surprised that Hippolyta and Diana were going to come on the trip too. And as they were packing, Letty, she's like, she's packing angry, like she's like, she got a whole attitude. She's gonna be having an attitude for the rest of this episode. But yeah, they look at Montavious. He's like, don't look at me. I had to tell her we were going. It's her car. And again, understandable, because there's no way that anybody would be taking my car, without me. Like, this is my car. What are you talking about? Oh, and y'all going to a museum? Great. We need to get away for a little bit, get outside of this house, grieving, the passing of my husband. I want my daughter to, like, go and, like, get some education. Like, yeah, let's all go to the museum. So they all, for the next 15 hours, they all go together with an additional passenger. It was old dude at the party who claimed that he had a tussle with Leti, but later on we find out that was complete bullshit because she was a virgin and she lost her virginity to take in the bathroom at the party. And they all go together. And when they're at the museum, there was a couple of things that I liked about it. The first is that Hippolyta and Diana, they had their little moment together where they were watching, the stars, and it's revealed that Hippolyta, she had actually named a star. However, because at the time she was a little black girl, and the organization that, that was like sponsoring it or in charge of it or whatever, they didn't think it would be right that a colored girl would be the face of their organization. So they gave credit away to some little white girl. And Hippolyta, obviously she was disappointed, but that's something that she had like made peace with a long time ago. And she basically tells Diana, like, you know the truth, and that's all that matters. And then Diana, she shouts out like, hey, that's such and such's star, and my mama named it. And then she tells her mom, see, now everybody knows too. And the symbolism that I took away from that is basically the newer and the younger generation finally telling the truth of what the previous generation did, and how it is our responsibility to make sure that the truth about what our parents, grandparents, and our ancestors did is finally brought to light, and they are given the adequate amount of credit that they deserve. An example of this is like, the film Hidden Figures, because a lot of people, they didn't know that, a black woman was responsible in contributing to a man getting on the moon. There are a lot of things that black people have done, have invented, and have contributed to the United States and to the world that they do not get their just dues for, which is very tragic. And again, I do feel that it is our responsibility as the newer generation and the generation, after us to, be thorough with our research and properly spread the word, because even up till now, there is an active effort to rewrite history and to make it seem, and to mold history and the past and reshape it in a way that fits within with the white supremacist gaze. Another example of this, which was also brought up in the museum, was how the colonizers interacted with the indigenous people of America, aka the Native Americans. And there was a tour guide lady. She was talking about how Atticus, he met and he had encountered the Native Americans and he had like civilized them, which is complete bullshit. And again, that just fits with that with that message about how like the time has now come to just speak the truth and not allow history to be reshaped and reformed to again to fit in nicely with this white supremacist gaze. So again, I really like that. I really enjoyed that. And then what ends up happening afterwards is that Tick is told by Montavious, like, hey, you see, that black guard, he's going to allow us to come in and look around the museum at night. We got 2 hours. And so they come back later on at night. It's Montavious, Tick, and Leti. And then they find, like, in the middle of, like, the, in the middle of, like, you know, the museum, a secret entrance underground. And if it were me, like, if I were, like, me being who I am, if I were in the story, the episode would have ended right there. I'm not going in no secret underground tunnel. But they decide to go down, and then they go deeper into the tunnel, and then they eventually find, you know, this dark hallway with a little rickety old bridge, and then and then they need to get over. Well, they don't need to get over. They want to get over because they're trying to get something. But you know, they find like this old rickety bridge, and so Tick ties, you know, a rope around Leti, just basically volunteering her to go. Like, what? Excuse me? And then she, you know, she rightly has questions like, is it safe? What are you talking about? And then Montavious, he says, because Tick, he's tying up the knots, and she's just like, are these, you know, the knots that you learned in the army? And then Montavious is like, no, those aren't the knots in the army. Those are the knots that, you know, I taught him, and my father taught me, and his father taught him. And Tick's great grandfather through Montavious or Uncle George, he used to be a slave, and it was his job to like tie the knots on like the saddles of the horses, so that way when the white people were riding the horses, like it was secure. And it was a rule that if anybody fell off of the horse, the slave that tied the knot, they would get a whipping. And then come Juneteenth, when all of the slaves, you know, were freed, like slavery had officially ended in Juneteenth, like look it up. Tick's great grandfather, he was the only one to leave the plantation without a lick of the whip on his back. And that was a very sweet, you know, story. And again, it's about like the newer generation, or the generation that comes after, you know, the past generation, just passing along this information. And he's basically telling Leti, you know, this is gonna hold. And it's a really sweet story. And again, if you think I'm gonna go walk across that rickety old bridge, even though like you tied these really good knots, you lost your mind. I don't care how good those knots are. I'm not walking across that rickety old bridge. And I use the word bridge very liberally around here because it's really just a skinny, long piece of plank wood going out into the darkness. Like, we don't know where it goes. Like, they got flashlights, but the lights ain't that strong, and she's basically going in there blind. So yeah, she goes, you know, slowly, teetering, tottering, and then she felt something, and it's a freaking axe. It's a swinging axe. I mean, I'm not entirely sure. I don't remember if it was an axe, but I'm just like, my dramatic and overactive imagination is calling it an axe. And Tick, he goes out to like help her, and then we realize that the bridge is starting to slowly disintegrate. And I'm thinking, like, wait a minute, if it's already disintegrating over here, why isn't it just, you know, slanting down and people are falling? But, you know, we're dealing with magic, so okay. And then Montavious, like, he jumps on and he goes real quick, and then they eventually like get across to the other side of where they need to go, and then they're going deeper into like the tunnel. They don't know where it's gonna lead. They don't know where it's gonna end, but you know, they're just going deeper, exploring. Yeah. And then we eventually find out, like, you know, there's water, and the water is slowly rising. I thought there was gonna be some type of crocodile, some type of gator around there somewhere, just ready to on them. But there wasn't. It was just a whole bunch of bodies and skeletons. And then Leti, she sees one body drifting, and she's just like, oh my God, that's one of my neighbors. One of the neighbors that came in and just never came out. And that, when I was watching it the first time, I'm thinking like, wait a minute, they're supposed to be in a museum in Boston, But Letty's house is in the suburbs of Chicago. How did her neighbor get all the way over there? So so the first time I watched that, I'm thinking, what the heck's going on? And then the water, again, it's slowly rising, and then they come across an elevator that looks suspiciously like the same type of elevator that Leti has at her house. And Tick, he basically says, it's too dangerous. I want the two of you to like go and get in this elevator and go to safety. And Leti, she has just about had it with Tick. And she rightfully points out, like, listen, Tick, yes, you're going through some stuff, but you know what? You're not the only one going through stuff. Okay, your father was kidnapped and held hostage. He had to Kill Bill his way from the ground to get up. She did that. Ha, ha, ha. Like, Kill Bill is it's a dope movie. Volume 1 and 2, really dope. And then Leti, she was just like, and I died. So can you please stop acting like you are the only one that's going through stuff? And yeah, like, Leti, she rightfully calls him out. Like, yes, Tick, you are going through a lot. Like, nobody is taking that away from you. But you are not the only one that is going through a lot. Like, it's not all about you. And again, like, the symbolism and like my perception of the thing is how I feel about the it's just how I feel about the Black community in general. Like, yes, Black men, the Black men that get oppressed and they get hurt, they are getting hurt, and they deserve to be stuck, protected against racism. But they're not the only ones that are dealing with it. Black women are dealing with this stuff too, because we're not just women, we're also Black. However, we tend to be treated as an afterthought. And then, the Black queer community, they just don't get any time in the spotlight whatsoever when they're dealing with their own oppression. So that's what I really liked about that. Like, a Black woman, calling out a Black woman, a Black man for thinking about himself and his own problems, and not taking the time to realize that he is not the only one going through stuff. Like, it's all of us. And then Leti, she, again, she still got that attitude, and she's just charging through. And then while there's while they're still walking, and like the water is like now up to the waist, mid waist, like up here mid waist, like Montavious, he lets it slip that he had the Book of Adams, and like he read it and he knew all of the information that was in there. And, Tick, he's upset. And again, like, understandably so. Like, like, Dad, you got all these answers. You see me, like, doing all this stuff. Like, what the heck, man? What the heck? And Montavious, he's really not being forthcoming and telling, and talking about, the whole why of the situation. But, it is what it is. And then they see this, they see, like, this door, this passageway that's locked. And it's got a disembodied arm attached to it. Now, again, I would have turned around and left. I would have tried to find that elevator and just go somewhere else. But again, Tick, he wants those answers. So he has the brilliant idea to take out the arm and then put on the ring and stick his own arm, not really knowing what's going to happen. I was being sarcastic when I said brilliant for some of you that weren't aware. But yeah, he just he doesn't know what's gonna happen. Like his own body could be severed for all he knows, but he decides to do it. And I flinched when I saw the blood, but that was just what was necessary to verify who he was, because again, that's why the sons of Adam needed Tick, because of his blood, his special blood, his bloodline. And his blood, that's why it worked for him. Like, that last guy, he may have had the ring, but he ain't had that pedigree, so he got... But anyway, Tick and Leti and Montavious, they're able to enter. And then it's like this... They go into a room that kind of looks like the inside of a ship. Like, that's what I got from it. And then you see, like, skeletons of what appears to be indigenous people of some type of Native American tribe. They're dead, like the cobwebs, like very obvious that nobody's been there for centuries. And then again, they decide to continue to look deeper and explore. And then they go into another room, and then they see like one type of mummified corpse, like down on the ground with like a scroll in their hand, and they decide to touch it. Not the mummified, being, but like the scrolls, and that just wakes up the person, and they're like, and then Tic, Leti, and Montavious, they're screaming, but they're not running. They're just stuck, bug-eyed, screaming, and not running. Like, I would have gave them like the first 5 seconds to like, cause it just happened, and they're like trying to process what is happening to them, like, ah. But sooner or later, that that whole voice needs to come into their head, and they need to book it. But no, they decide to stay and watch as the mummified skeleton like comes to life. And what really happens is something that I was not expecting to happen. The dead body, it slowly like regains flesh and muscle mass, and it goes from being like this scary looking, possibly demonically possessed skeleton, and is turned back into their original form, which is a very beautiful and wonderful person known as Yahima, I believe is what they are called. They are the two spirit, somebody who is intersex, and again, like, yeah, when I first saw it, I was just like, oh wow, they look so amazing, like the markings, and just like, I was really feeling this representation, this double representation of indigenous person and then also the intersex two-spirit person. And because also, because we unfortunately live in a society where people view gender as only being two things, where in actuality that's not true. There are certain cultures that that believed in a third gender, and that it wasn't just male or female. And again, to like have an indigenous person there, and then for them to represent like the two spirit, that was cool. And it was also really weird how they were speaking a language that wasn't English, but Tic was able to understand them perfectly. And again, I think that has something to do, again, with his blood. And we learn that that Yahima, they were part of a Native American tribe that had encountered Atticus, Tic's ancestor, and they said that never in their life have they met somebody that was so greedy. That's what that wasn't the exact words that they used, but basically, oh my God, this person was so greedy. They're so hungry, for knowledge. They're so hungry for power. I just couldn't believe it. And Yahima, they regret trusting this person, because once it became apparent about what their malevolent intentions were, they killed Atticus. He killed like Yahima's people, family, friends, and they were stuck and they were trapped in there. And then Tic has the brilliant idea after learning all of this, saying like, yeah, hey, can you help me do the exact same thing that, you were doing with my ancestor that you later regretted because he turned out to be a monster? And when I say monster, I mean like a sociopath, psychopath, a monster in like human flesh, not like those actual nocturnal monsters from the first episode. And I'm really starting to kind of miss them a little bit. Like, what are they up to? And then, Yahima, understandably, is just like, no, I don't know you. I don't know your spirit. I don't know your people. Only thing I know is that you are descended from, what's his face. And I didn't trust him. And Tic is just like, I mean, yeah, I have his blood, but, I'm not like him. I'm not his people. I don't really claim him that way. And Yahima, Yahima looked like they were about to say more, but, the glass breaks and, water comes flooding in, and they all gotta go. Like, they all gotta go, they gotta book it. So then they're going, they manage to make it to the elevator, and then Yahima starts to scream and lets out, like, this very, like, what's the shrieking sound? And Montavious knocks Yahima out. Like, seriously? After everything you just learned, you are now going to enact violence upon poor Yahima, who is probably just as scared and confused as the rest of you. Like, I didn't appreciate that. I really felt like they could have found another way to get Yahima quiet. It's not like Yahima's screaming was attracting monsters, attracting the gators. Like, I didn't appreciate that. And then while they're escaping the scroll, the scroll or like the lost pages, they get lost. And Leti, she goes down and she, swims to go get it. And I have to say, I was actually surprised that Leti knew how to swim as a black person in the 1950s because of the whole, segregation, pools and beaches and whatnot, which really hindered black people's ability to like learn how to swim, which is why a lot of black Americans don't know how to swim. Me being one of them. Yeah, me being one of them. I mean, not through lack of trying. I had a relaxer at the time when I was a child, and I was worried about, my hair. But, I'm natural now, and I'm an adult. And, once this, whole virus thing has ended, maybe your girl will try and learn how to swim again. But yeah, I was surprised that she was able to swim, and I'm happy that she was able to swim, and she managed to get those squirrels, and she managed to get back in time. And then she and Tig just have a passionate kiss, and like it almost seems as that any and everything that they were mad at each other before is now over because they had a near death experience again. And so yay for them, yay for them. And they are taken away. And while all this is happening, we get we spend some time with Ruby, who is Leti's sister. And Ruby, it has been, even though she is a very she has a lovely voice and like she can play the guitar, it is her goal to be a retail worker at a department store. And she has been working on her resume. Like that has been like her that has been her agency for like the majority of the time that we have seen her. And like she walks into the store with her resume all ready, and then she sees another black woman already there at the store working. And so since they already let in one, they already got their token Negro, they ain't gonna hire nobody else. Like, Ruby knows that. And, she's so sad about that because she really wanted that job. But at the same time, she can't really show her disappointment right then and there because she needs to be happy, for the black woman that could get through. And I can kind of understand the frustration a little bit. Like, you wanted to go in, but somebody else already took the position. And they're only going to they're only going to let one of you in. They ain't going to let all of you in. And because of that, I really feel that is what has started the whole tension around, the special Negro syndrome, aka being the only Negro in the room. How some black people, they want to be the only one in the room because they feel as if it makes them special. It is what it is. And Ruby, she decides to like go to the bar, drink a little bit, and like drown her sorrows and like plays some music. But because she's because she's at the very least she's lit, if not drunk, and because she's sad, her music is it just isn't as good. And then she goes to the bar, and then the bartender gives her a drink, and she's just like, I ain't pay for this. And then the guy's like, yeah, I know you didn't pay for it. He did, and it's William. It's William. And before he got there, what ended up happening with Christina, because that Christina being at the door, that wasn't like at Leti's door, that wasn't the last time we saw her. She was around the neighborhood, and then the police came, like 2 police officers came, and they escorted her to like a secret room. And we find out that the chief of police, he is also affiliated with the same society that her father was a part of, but I guess he wasn't an official member because he didn't have the official ceremony. And Christina, she points that out after she reveals to him that she is responsible for Leti getting that house, which again makes me beg the question, well, if this house was so important to your secret society, why didn't the men in the society ensure that they owned the house and that nobody else could buy it, aka Leti? And the chief of police, not only is he racist, but he is, obviously misogynistic. You can't really have one without the other. Like, I've never met a racist that was, pro-woman. Except, well, no, I take that back. I've never met a male racist who would, no. Actually, I even take that back because a woman, a woman that is, a racist, but also pro-woman, she's pro a specific type of woman, which isn't really pro-woman. You're just pro for one type of woman. So, I rescind that as well. But yeah, he's misogynistic as well. And because of, this whole, they keep mentioning her gender. And then because after this episode, where we meet Yahima, and like Yahima is both man and woman two-spirit, it got me thinking, especially around the second time around, that why is it that Christina, she's obviously, she was never going to be admitted officially into the society, yet she's still allowed to be so close to it, and she does have some level of power, and they keep talking about her gender. And then that also made me think of William, and how he like has the same hair color as her, and how they've never really been seen in the same room together. Whenever William is there, Christina is not. And whenever Christina is there, William is not. And, they got the magic, so that got me thinking. And then another YouTuber that I watch, they correctly, deduced, like, could it be that Christina and William are, like, the same person? Which would kind of make sense. Especially, again, after we learn about, Yahima, like, could it be possible that Christina is, like, using her magic to, like, transform herself into a man? Because, again, we never see them in the same room together. And why is it that, how was it that William was able to survive? Because, again, if this was an all-male society and, like, during the ceremony, why wouldn't William be there? Unless at the time he was Christina, and Christina was not permitted to be there. And then also, like, when Christina leaves, obviously the chief of police, like, he puts a tail on her. And when she goes into her home, William automatically comes out, and he kicked both of their asses. Like, there were two of them, they had guns, and William still kicked their asses. And then he said, Christina, she doesn't like to be disturbed. Now, if you'll excuse me, I got a date. And then, he's at the bar, and that's where we see Ruby, and it all circles back. And I just had a couple of questions. How is it that this white man was able to enter a colored bar without anybody, like, turning and raising an eyebrow? Like, huh? What are you doing here? Why is he here? Like, he's there, and nobody seems to, like, be paying that any mind whatsoever. Like, I would have been like, what is he doing here? You know what? This smells like something's about to go down. I'm going to go home. But no, all the other black folk, they're not there. But anyway, he buys Ruby a drink, and Ruby's just like, oh, let me get this. You want to make me a kept woman. You want to enter some type of modern day plissage. And for those of you that don't know what a plissage is, I would encourage you to Google it. I will put the name up there, because I don't want to go, like, on another rant like I have already been doing, making this video a lot longer than it needs to be. But basically, he wants to set her up to be, like, some type of side piece. And, Ruby says she's not down for that. But in the end, she ends up going back to his home and having some type of one-night stand with him. And I'm just like, Ruby, no, Ruby, no, oh my gosh. Because we know what William is about. And again, because it's clear that they're manipulating not just Tick, but also Leti, I do have that fear for Ruby, that William being there, he has some nefarious, plan to try and use Ruby to manipulate Leti, which will in turn manipulate Tick. So I'm worried for Ruby. I'm scared for Ruby. I don't know what's going to happen, but I will root for Ruby in the long run. And then, all that has happened, and Tick, Montavious, and Leti, that elevator was some type of magical teleporter and took Leti straight back to her house. I would love an explanation for that. And Yahima has decided to help them. And after they agree to help Tick translate the pages, Tick walks away. And when Tick walks away, his father, Montavious, enters the room. And he closes the door. And Yahima, after has decided, after spending really, honestly, I don't think enough time to warrant Yahima to agree to help them or trust them in any way, he goes behind Yahima. And again, they're very calm, trusting after everything. And then Montavious slits their throat. And that was not cool. Like, I know he's trying to protect his son, but when you enact violence against somebody who hasn't done anything to you and is agreeing to do work for you to help you, I wasn't here for it, especially since I was excited to have Yahima for the long run. I was thinking, oh great, we're getting this new character who's going to be like great representation for, Native Americans, and is also going to be, great representation for people who do not adhere to the heteronormative standards of gender and sex. Like, I was very here for it. But no, Montavious just slits Yahima's throat. And I'm hoping that they'll survive because, they were a mummified corpse for like underneath the ground for like centuries and decades and whatnot. So I'm hoping that the to the throat isn't, permanent. But again, we don't know. And that's just very, very aggravating. But yeah, I want Yahima to stay. I don't want Yahima to go around. And then also, like, what are they gonna do with what excuse is Montavious gonna have for this? Like, what? Like, how is he going to explain away the fact that he just assaulted Yahima? Like, I have no idea. I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it whatsoever. But anyway, so that is like what has happened so far in the 4th episode. And, how I felt about it, what I perceived and the symbolism behind that. And thank you so much for watching.